and this is only half of it. I'm trying to put them all in chronological order around me, but as you can tell from the title, we are doing my books that I read in 2022 video. I have been doing this video since 2015, the genesis of my YouTube channel. I've always shared the books that I've read that year. It is so fun to look back on, to review, and then give inspo or recommendations to other readers. Books can be trendy, but books are also timeless. So this is an awesome video to look back on when you are in search of a great book recommendation. And for the last couple of years, I have always done this video at night on my bedroom floor or in my bed, and it feels very cozy and kind of sets, you know, that like nook reading environment. So cozy on up and let's talk books. I have my 2022 journal in front of me, and one of the pages that I always do at the beginning of my journal is a list of the books that I have read. So in 2022, I have read 28 books. I was so close to 30, maybe next year. But my goal this year was really just to read 20 books. So the fact that I'm almost 10 books over that resolution is very rewarding to me. So I'm proud of myself. Definitely let me know what books you've read this year, how many books you've read, your favorite books, and I'm curious if you've read any of the books that I have read. I have 30 books in front of me, so we're just going to start with the first book I read in January, all the way to the book that I'm currently reading, and I hope that you enjoy. So the very first book that I read in January of 2022 was Olivia by Dorothy Strachey. I hope I'm saying her last name right, but I love this book. It's actually one of my favorite queer books that I have discovered. Olivia is a Penguin Classics, and it's written during the postmodernism era with Virginia Woolf and the Bloomsbury Group. And if you're familiar with literature at all, that is a really awesome time period because writers are starting to really expand beyond what it means to be a writer or what literature is defined of, and they're really branching out and creating these awesome, unique pieces that are mostly mental. Like a lot of the modern and postmodernism literature is a mental plot, you know, so it's a lot of stream of consciousness, it's a lot of journeys of the mind rather than physical journeys or quests. But what makes this book beautiful is that it's about Olivia, a student, kind of like madly but innocently in love with her teacher, and the teacher never does anything, but you can tell that the child is kind of looking up to her in this like maternal but love way, and it's good. It's a quick read. It reminded me a lot of like my high school teacher crushes that I've had, and I like it because it's not the contemporary take of like Ezra Fitz and Aria Montgomery, you know, like no one crosses a line, there's no controversy, there's no grooming. The teacher is very much like, I love you, but as a student, and I need to, well, I don't want to give it away, but it was really, really great, and it made me remember a lot of my younger innocent emotions. What's really interesting too is that this was first published in 1949 under a pseudonym, and it's roughly based around the author's own life. I forget a lot of details because I read this a year ago, but I'm pretty sure this wasn't published until after her death. There was another writer that helped, or at least not until she was a lot older. She sent it to a friend to be published like years later. I hope that's right because again, I read this a year ago, but it's rich in vocabulary. I mean, you know, if you like Virginia Woolf or William Faulkner or any of the more like post-modernism pieces, you're gonna eat this up. And if you're looking for a cute, sweet, woman-loving woman book that you could relate to having a crush on like a teacher, I think that's such like a queer pipeline, but you'll love it. The next book that I read was the book of Two Ways by Jodi Picoult, who is my favorite contemporary fiction writer. I feel like she is my guilty pleasure writer or author. When I want to read a good novel that's going to keep my attention, I read her books. I have read every single one. I have a whole bookshelf dedicated to her work, and this is one of her more recent novels that she's written. I think it came out 2 years ago, and oh my gosh, this book got me thinking. I'm sure you can tell by the title, but this book kind of has a two-way plot system, and it makes you think about how we're all connected and how life can change so drastically depending on what you do. And I felt like I could relate so much. Like I was going through such a similar particular like oh my god moment. Like I don't know, there's a lot to do with like Egyptian history and hieroglyphics and the concept of time and like the one that got away, but what happens if like he never got away, like all this stuff. But I was reading it during a very similar time of my life where like I needed to know that we were all connected and that it's all gonna work out. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but this was a really great novel and Jodi Picoult is one of my favorites, so I really loved it. The third book that I read was by Matt Haig, I think is how you say his last name, and it's called Reasons to Stay Alive. The start of this year was really tough on me, so I was just looking for clarity. I didn't finish this book, and I don't do that often. I usually have to dedicate myself to like finish a book, but it wasn't really my style. It's basically his journey of having like a severe episode of depression that it's really dark, and I think it was supposed to help you, but it just like wasn't what I wanted to read in that moment. But I also didn't finish it, so it might have gotten better. I think I was just looking for something with a bit more substance because the chapters are like 1 to 2 pages long and sad and short, and I just wanted more of like a novel at the time. But I did read 3/4 of this one. The next book that I read is so good. It's by J. Ryan Straddle, and it is called The Lager Queen of Minnesota. So I live in Minnesota and I love books on Minnesota history. Although this is fiction, I believe it is roughly based on fact, but it's basically about how a woman started her own brewery, and I love beer. I love breweries. I want to visit every single one in Minnesota, and there's so much history in them. If I remember correctly, it takes place in the 40s to 70s. Let me just confirm that real quick. Well, 2003 is like the most recent time, but most of the story is in the past. Yeah, 1959. So it's like Minnesota in the 60s, and there are so many places or colleges where I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been there. I don't think it's a real brewery, but it had me convinced because it goes through like, you know, by the end of 1976, Blott's Special Light was the second best-selling Minnesota brewed beer in Minnesota. I don't know, it was good. It's women in business, it's history, it's local history, it's a novel, and it's like historical fiction, which is fun. So love that, highly recommend. The next book that I read was written almost in like a scientific way, like I was reading a science research paper, but it's called Life Before Life, Children's Memories of Previous Lives by Jim B. Tucker. Oh my gosh, I'm like a little scared because it's 12:30 at night and I'm filming this, and feng shui wise my back is to a door. This kind of studies children that remember their past lives, and there are so many cases that you explore and study to really see like, okay, how much of this is fact? How much of this can we prove? They sometimes will take the kids to these places that they claim they're from, and they'll remember facts about families or things that there's just no way the kid should know about, but somehow knows. So it's eerie, but I felt like I was learning from it, but it's also a bit spiritual. So if you're interested in reincarnation and, you know, this idea of a life before the current life and how that works, and a lot of these kids had like scars of like how they passed away in a past life, and then it makes you think about birthmarks that we have. There's a big theory that if you have a birthmark, it's how you passed away in a past life. So it's so interesting. Even if you are skeptical, like this would be a really good read because you do have more of a skeptical eye when you're reading it. So feel free to like try not to believe it and read it, because it's not like just based on what these 2-year-olds are saying. Like they try to really back it up with facts. If there are remaining family members alive from the deceased that they claim to be, they'll talk to them, like they'll try to prove it, and it's so good. Highly recommend that book as well. The next book that I read is Let Me Tell You What I Mean by Joan Didion. Joan Didion is one of my favorite writers of all time. She might be I don't know, Virginia Woolf, Joan Didion, Jeanette Walls, Jodi Picoult, there are so many, but this beautiful lady right here, may she rest in peace, she passed away almost a year ago. I think I read this in honor of her passing. She writes a lot of personal essays, novels, like The Year of Magical Thinking, heartbreaking but beautiful. So I wanted to read more of her writing. They're all like short personal essays on her life, and it's so interesting. The essays date from 1968 to 2000, which have not been gathered together until now to showcase Joan Didion's incisive reporting, her empathetic gaze, and her insights on writing. They touch on subjects ranging from newspapers to not getting into Stanford. Isn't that crazy? She was like one of the most iconic writers of her time, and she got rejected from Stanford. I know that means nothing in this idealized world of success, but Joan Didion is a goddess. I also love reading personal essay type of books, as well as novels and poetry and nonfiction and memoirs, so they're all awesome. The next book that I read was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, who also wrote Eat, Pray, Love, but this book instead focuses more on like manifestation and the magic of like how your thoughts control your life, and it's really inspiring to kind of help you navigate and like manifest your dream life, which I always love. You know, like if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that the book You Are a Badass completely changed my life and helped me manifest the life that I have today. Oh my god, I didn't know Luna was behind me. She's totally protecting me right now from what I don't want to know. But if you're looking for some motivation or inspiration to kind of feel like the magic all around you and notice the little details or connections that make this life so magical, I recommend giving this a shot. Whether we are looking to write a book, make art, find new ways to address challenges in our work, embark on a dream long deferred, or simply infuse our everyday lives with more mindfulness and passion, Big Magic cracks open a world of wonder and joy. This could be a really great book to read if you're looking for that New Year's resolution spark of like, I want to change my life. Next, by Jen Sincero, I read Badass Habits. So I think I just mentioned, but You Are a Badass really changed my life for the better. Like that gave me such a push to go for things, and I'm glad I did because here I am. But this was another book that she wrote kind of going over like tiny habits that can change your life. It just dives deeper into her whole mentality on life and everything that she kind of preaches. I will say nothing hit as hard as the original You Are a Badass, but there were some good helpful tips in here of just like small things that you can do to really change your whole life, kind of like Atomic Habits, but in Jen Sincero style. The next and last Jen Sincero book that I had yet to read was You Are a Badass Every Day. So kind of going on those two ideas of You Are a Badass and Badass Habits. These are things that you can do every single day to kind of keep your mind fresh, focused, mighty, and driven, according to the back. And it was a very easy read, which was helpful and kind of helps you kind of navigate those little tasks and talks about the universe and energy, and it's really awesome. So again, highly recommend. The beginning of this year is an awesome time to read books like this, kind of get that motivation going. Are you gonna help? The next book that I read was Broken Horses, which is Brandi Carlile's new memoir. I love her. Brandi Carlile is one of my favorite artists. She's a bit folk, but she, I think, was the first like queer artist that wrote a few songs like about her wife or her love with like female pronouns that I noticed way back when in like 2013, 2014, and I was like, oh my god. And I think subconsciously I really liked her at that time without realizing that it was because I could relate, but her music felt fresh and beautiful and her lyrics were beautiful, and this is such a well done memoir of kind of how she became who she is today and how she's able to be friends with her idols and musicians that she's looked up to. She has such a great kind of like classic memoir take on coming from poverty but having a dream, and how every little like music show that she entered like took her one step further to that big break, and how magical those moments were like in the industry or meeting people that she's always looked up to, and now to be able to say that like she met Elton John or is friends with Joni Mitchell, like, and it's full of personal photographs and song lyrics, and it's so cool to see how all of these songs that I have loved growing up, well, like as a teen and in my 20s, because I hadn't discovered her until like 2014. It is so crazy like to see the stories of how all of my favorite songs came to be and what they're about. Like there's this one song that hits me in my soul that I first heard in in high school called That Year, and it is sad, and it's about, well, just listen to it. it, but it's about a student that she went to school with who took his own life. But there were lyrics in that song that stuck to me as a teenager. Like, her voice is beautiful. Oh my god, highly, just read it. The next book that I read was by Gabrielle Bernstein. I'm so bad with the pronunciation sometimes, I am so sorry, but it's called The Universe Has Your Back. Love this book. This is up there with You Are a Badass to me. The way that she writes, like, I underlined so much, I learned so much. I was going through a really big spiritual journey when I was reading this. I had so many big questions. I felt so abandoned and lost and confused as to why certain things in my life were happening, and this helped. She writes with such precision and makes everything make sense, you know? Like, these big ideas that if you, like, you know, try explaining manifestation to someone that doesn't believe in it, or like try explaining like a very complex idea, she breaks it all down. You can see some of my annotations and highlighting. I firmly believe that this book has made me a better manifester and has understood really big ideas and concepts, or like how if you like separate the love of the universe and choose fear, like you won't get in. Like, there were so many big things that like I was just telling everybody in my life about, and projection and perception. I was taking notes in my journal based on each chapter. Like, literally this was a textbook and I was taking notes. It really does show you how much of our lives are controlled by how we perceive something to be and not how it actually is, and how our own projection creates our perception of reality, or energy flows where your attention goes. In the presence of feeling good, you are powerful. Your presence is powerful. It talks about how to become like a magnet for miracles, and there are affirmations in here that can help, like, I feel safe, calm, and in the flow with whatever is happening around me. There are prompts, there are steps, there are things to say. Like, when you're feeling disconnected from your own power, simply say, I witness that I'm out of alignment with my power. I choose to see peace instead of this. Your desire is enough to help you begin to reconnect. Return to, like, there's so much in here. Oh my god, I could probably have like a whole podcast series just breaking this down and deep diving into each chapter, but she really tells you like what to do and how to get what you want. And I will say it worked, because that period of confusion for me ended in such joy. I kind of stuck on the spiritual journey for a while because, again, I was looking for guidance, I was looking for answers. And the next book that I read, a classic, The Four Agreements. Highly recommend. I feel like everyone that I've spoken to about this book has read it, but if you have not, it's fairly easy to get through. It just covers the 4 simple agreements, the 4 agreements of wisdom, you know? And it goes through what they are and what they mean and how to kind of use them in your life. I've written down the agreements in my journal as reminders, but we have the first agreement, be impeccable with your word. The second agreement, don't take anything personally. The third agreement, don't make assumptions. The fourth agreement, always do your best. And I know it seems simple, but we break down these ideas and it just helps you be better and live a better life and work on like happiness and freedom and finding love. So highly recommend. Such a great read. The next book that I read kind of comes after that. It's called The Fifth Agreement. So it is a branch off of the other book, and it breaks down what the fifth agreement is. And I don't know, do I tell you what it is? This book is a little bit longer, but still pretty easy to get through and definitely makes you think, and it's awesome. So highly recommend that as well. Okay, at this point in the year, it is almost June, almost Pride Month, and in the summer, I like to read more fluffy fiction. I like to give my mind kind of a break. I still want to read, but I want something lighter to read by the pool or before bed. There's something about reading in the summer where I just want to escape into like a romance novel, basically, or like a young adult romance novel. And in honor of Pride Month, I really wanted to find some good queer novels to read, and I've asked my viewers before like some of their favorites. So some of the books that I read this summer were based on your recommendations, so thank you so much if any of these books you had recommended to me. But in June, I just really wanted to find some good queer, lesbian, women-loving women books to read. Even though I am dating my boyfriend, my identity of being queer is still very important to me, and reading these books are like a way for me to keep that part of me alive or not feel like I can't, like it's not part of me anymore, if that makes sense. If you're also queer and are in more of a heteronormative or heterosexual relationship, maybe you can understand what I'm kind of like grasping at here. But basically, I just still wanted to feel like gay in some parts of my life, and that has nothing to do with my relationship or my partner that I'm dedicated to, but I wanted to, I don't know, honor that side of me. And this isn't the biggest genre yet in writing or bookstores. Some bookstores don't even have like an LGBTQ plus reading section, so I have scoured the internet finding some to read, and this is what I found this summer. Starting with One Last Stop by Casey McQuestion. This book took me by surprise. I will say I was not expecting it to be as great as I found it, which no hate to the author, like it's a beautiful, well-written book, but you know, like young adult romance novels aren't really my genre. I find them kind of similar to the feeling of a Hallmark Christmas movie where it's just a bit too corny. But again, in the summer, I was looking for that kind of feeling. It's really cool. There's a bit of time travel in it, but not in like too corny of a way. But there's something about the subway and a girl being stuck in time, but she falls in love with someone. It's really cute, and there are some juicy scenes in here, just saying. And it takes place in New York, and I was not expecting to be as attached to the characters as I had become, but it was good. I really liked that. Really enjoyed that book. Very similar, the next book that I read was by Alexandria Bellefleur. I don't know how to say her last name. Written in the Stars, another woman-loving woman novel. This one takes place in Seattle, and it's cool because one of them does astrology-based work for work, so there is this play on like zodiacs and astrology being mentioned. But of course, the girl that she is supposed to loathe is very type A, doesn't believe in any of that stuff, works hard, doesn't want a relationship, kind of has this like cliche perfect apartment, and then in comes this girl that has like a bit of a cliche messy life and spills wine and never plans, and they're not supposed to be compatible, but they are, and then they fake dating because both of them are like very pressured by their friends and family to date, so then they're like, we should just tell them that we're dating, so they stop setting us up on these blind dates. But I'm sure you can guess what happens when people pretend to date in movies and books. But it's good. The next book that I read in honor of Pride and just summer and all of that was none other than The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. What a treasure. I wish I could experience the feeling of reading this book for the first time over again. It was gripping, it was addicting, it was beautiful. Like Taylor Jenkins Reid, the way that she writes, it's refreshing to say the least, but it is juicy and rich, and I have never loved a story more. I have never been more attached to characters before. I have never researched real life people that were roughly based on a novel before, but I was so intrigued by Elizabeth Taylor and, oh, I can't remember his name right now, but he was in Pete's Dragon, Evelyn and Cecilia, like and the classic timepiece of like classic Hollywood, like what a time, like watching Hollywood become what it is. Oh my god, I could not get over this book. I probably should reread it. I've also never cried harder by something that has happened in a novel. Like I've never been so attached. I've recommended this to everyone, and I know people are skeptical when a book is like super hyped up, and I've had some friends be like, girl, is it actually good? Because like everyone's talking about it. It's so good. Like you will become so attached and wish that these people were real and feel so sad for parts of their lives. And it just like, I don't know, it makes you wonder about a lot of things. It also is like a really good book on bisexuality representation, because biphobia is so real. And as someone that has dated both genders, you know, I've identified as bisexual in the past, but it never felt right for me. It didn't really stick. Like, nothing if you identify as that, but for me, I knew it didn't fit right for me, and that's why I like the label queer. And you don't even have to have a label, you know, sexuality is just a spectrum. But this does a really good job at like validating bisexuality, and there's even a part where like that conversation happens, and it's just amazing. I don't think I could ever talk about this book enough. I love it so much. Well, after The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, when nothing else could compare, I decided to take a break and read some personal essays. So I read Girls Can Kiss Now, essays by Jill Goudowitz. Jill is amazing. She's funny, she's queer, she's up to date on trends and pop culture, and it's fun. So these are personal essays that have to do with pop culture and sexuality and dating and liking girls and friendships and the dynamics of friendships when you like are jealous of your straight girl's boyfriend, but you don't know why. And it's just really cool. Like, it talks about iconic moments in our pop culture history, ranging from like Britney Spears to, oh, she loves Taylor Swift too. So if you want to read about someone who likes Taylor, this is great. It talks about like Twitter and how like one of her tweets got the police or the FBI to like show up at her door to make sure she wasn't gonna unalive someone. The most interesting part to me was her friendship with a former Disney Channel star, because I had never kind of like seen that side of that star before. But they're really great essays, and it's cool because you can read them in chapters. Each chapter can pretty much be independent by itself because they are just all separate essays, but this was a really great read. And then after that, jumping back into the Evelyn Hugo world, I read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you did not know, this exists in the same universe as Evelyn Hugo, and it is based off of one of her husband's family. The quote from Oprah Daly's review of the book on the cover, it says, "If summer could somehow fit into a book, then you'd find it in Malibu Rising." And they are right. This book feels like summer. It takes place in Malibu. It kind of stems on this one house party that the family has every single summer, but there's a lot on family dynamics, and a few characters in Evelyn Hugo get brought up, and it just feels really nice. There are 4 siblings that it follows, and it takes place in the 80s, a little bit before, a little bit in like the 70s and 60s, but like the 80s, it's so fun. And I love Taylor Jenkins Reid's style of writing. There's a 3rd book in this universe that just came out called Carrie Soto is Back, which is roughly based on Carrie, who is in this book. And I haven't picked it up yet because I'm waiting for it to come out on paperback, but I'm very excited to read that this upcoming year in 2023. But yeah, if you have read Evelyn Hugo but have not read Malibu Rising, I think you're going to like it. Oh no. The next few books are when I gave Colleen Hoover a try, because, you know, I used to really hate trendy books, and if something was trending, I didn't want anything to do with it. But I put that pedestal behind me and thought, you know, maybe there's a reason she's so popular. So I bought a lot of her books at the same time because I wanted to give her a fair shot and not just read one novel, but a handful. So for a big portion of the month of August, I was reading Colleen Hoover at my pool, and it's fine. It was honestly the best pool read, and some books I hated, some I didn't mind, some I actually enjoyed. So if you also have not tried Colleen Hoover's books yet, here's what I think. I started with It Ends With Us because it was the most seen book on my social media and most recommended, and I hated this one the most. I thought it romanticized stuff. I thought it took stereotypes. I didn't like the whole fantasy category. I thought the letters to Ellen DeGeneres was super cringy, and none of the story felt believable. That's just my opinion. The next book that I tried was Ugly Love, and I will say it hooked me a bit more. I liked the plot. It made me cry, and that's what everyone was saying, is that this like made them sob and they were so sad. I was not emotionally affected by it, and I think it's because it wasn't believable to me. This one did make me cry. I got a bit more attached to the plot and the characters. There was a really weird thing though with my book where a chunk of it was missing. Like towards the end, when it was starting to actually like get really into, you know, like the core of the plot, like it says, I hope this is in focus, chapter 26, and then the next chapter goes back to chapter 8. And if you look at how books are made, you know, they're like kind of separated into chunks where like this page is actually the same page as this in the printer, and then they fold it. So I was looking at that and it got duplicated. Like the end of the book got mirrored with the first chapters up here. So I was missing a few chapters and I literally just had to skip them and like read the ending. So I still don't know what I missed, and that's the one weird thing. I could go back to the bookstore and tell them, but it wasn't worth it to me for a like $12 book. But I did enjoy this one. So I know this wasn't everyone's cup of tea, and there is like a really weird step sibling, not really thing. I wasn't a fan of that part either, but I liked it better than It Ends With Us. The next Colleen Hoover book that I tried was Reminders of Him, and this is my favorite one. Well, maybe. It might be this one or the next one. I liked this one a lot. I love the plot. It's about a mom who just got released from prison and wants to reconnect with her daughter that she had during her sentence, who doesn't know her, doesn't have a relationship with her, and everyone in her life, her daughter's life, is very skeptical at letting her in, and it just breaks her heart. I cried so hard in this book, and there's just something about that mother and daughter dynamic that really gets me. So I liked the love story in here. I thought it was more believable, and it just, again, breaks your heart, but it has a very feel-good ending, which helped. It also kind of felt like a Jodi Picoult novel, so maybe I liked it for that reason as well, but it was good. And the last Colleen Hoover book that I have read for now is none other than Verity. The battery died, but it wasn't as scary as everyone kind of told me it would be. It was definitely more of like a psychological thriller, but very manageable. So if you don't like scary stuff but want to read it, like, don't worry, you can handle this. I'm usually kind of a baby with scary books, and horror books are so much more terrifying than horror films because you can mentally like make it as scary as your mind. Like, I don't know, it like freaks you out. Like, it can mess with you, but it was great. Not too scary, but definitely like a good read. And then at the end, you're like kind of supposed to question stuff, and I don't want to give it away, but I do believe one side because there's like slight proof early on in the story that like wouldn't exist if, yeah. It's good though. Definitely a book to kind of chat about with some friends that have read it afterwards and see like what their thoughts are on everything. The next book that I read was Where the Crawdads Sing. My boyfriend's mom actually bought this book for me, which was really sweet of her. I don't know why I thought this was like a horror book before, but maybe it's the cover. I don't know what I saw, but I thought this was like a terrifying book, so I was very scared to start reading it, but it's actually just very sad and beautifully written and has like a murder crime case in it. But I will say I found it kind of predictable in the end, like the big end thing, because obviously like it had to show up somewhere, but it was good. And I really appreciated the movie, because there is a movie, because I read the book. Like, I don't know if I would like the movie. I probably would, but because I read the book and then I watched the film, I had so much more like appreciation for everything in it. But that was another great novel. The next book that I read was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I meant to read this in the summer and I just didn't get to it until like October, but it was a nice fluffy romance novel. It had that Hallmark movie feel where she like is an editor from the big city and spends a month in a small town and falls in love with her arch nemesis, and they have to save the town bookstore. But if you're into stuff like that, I think you would enjoy this. I don't think I would read this again, but I had to try it out. It's a #1 New York Times bestseller. Yeah, a good light pool read. But if you like reading books like Colleen Hoover, The People We Meet on Vacation, I think is another book that she wrote, then you might like it. I didn't hate it, it's just not my go-to genre. The next book that I read was by Emily Ratajkowski, and it's called My Body. I think everyone needs to read this. I had no idea who she was before this book. And I looked her up and she has like a gazillion million Instagram followers and is very famous, but she was one of the models in the music video Blurred Lines in the uncensored, like completely topless nude music video. And she talks about the industry of modeling and nude shoots and how men would use her body and situations that she should not have been put in. And it's very interesting because, you know, the body's beautiful and holds so much power, and it provided her so much success and money and gave her a son. And she talks about that motherhood, like magical experience of creating a human and how powerful it was to birth a human. But she also talks about how she did feel used by men and how men talked about her body to her and how they would just touch her when they shouldn't have at shoots or modeling photo shoots, and comments that she's gotten, and even how as an underage child, like, it's crazy. As someone who has been on OnlyFans and does OnlyFans too, like, this is a very fresh take, and I think everyone would appreciate some things that she has said in this, because even though you may feel empowered like posting a pic of your tits, like coming from someone that has made so much money off of that, like, and who is successful and is seen as like a celebrity, her view on her body, I don't know, it was good. Like, yeah, if you watch my content from OnlyFans or do OnlyFans or like Emily Ratajkowski, like, this gave me such a bigger appreciation for her, and who her Instagram kind of like portrays her as being, I think, is very different than who I feel like she is as a writer. Like, it sucks to say, but she's very smart, and you don't see that on her Instagram. And it was nice that this was the first thing that I kind of had my impression based on about her. And then I looked up her Instagram, because I'm not one to follow like those big famous models that just post pictures of themselves in bikinis with like a little caption. But yeah, this book was very, very beautiful and had amazing essays, and she's a great writer. Like, I'm glad she wrote a book. Emily Ratajkowski interrogates beauty, sex, power, objectification, fame, and betrayal, both by self and others. It makes you mad, but it makes you proud. So really, really recommend giving this a read. It's very quick to go through. They're just short essays. Took me like less than a week to read. Everyone should read this. The last book that I finished in 2022 this year was by Emily Austen, called Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead. This was so funny, such pure gold, such a good novel. It's queer, and I didn't even know that going into it, but once I realized that our protagonist, our main character, is queer, I'm like, oh my god, what a bonus. The style of writing is genius, such good dry humor, and it's so funny. Like, the main girl has such high anxiety, which I relate to, but the way that she writes about it is in such a light, funny way, but like serious, but I'm like, oh my god, like, I feel that hard. And she finds herself accidentally getting a job at a Catholic church where you're supposed to be Catholic, but she's atheist and dating a woman, and accidentally has to, like, it's just so funny, and you get scared for a moment too. Yeah, it's just, Emily Austen took me by surprise. I think this is her first debut, or like her first novel. It says, meet Gilda. She cannot stop thinking about death. Desperate for relief from her anxious mind and alienated from her repressive family, Gilda responds to a flyer for free therapy at a local Catholic church, where Father Jeff assumes she's there for a job interview. Caught off guard and too embarrassed to correct him, Gilda is abruptly hired to replace the recently deceased receptionist. Blending warmth, deadpan humor, and pitch-perfect observations about the human condition, Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead is a crackling exploration of what it takes to stay afloat in a world where your expiration and the expiration of those you love is the only certainty. And yeah, it was juicy, it was funny, it made me laugh, it made me want to give this book to everyone and be like, read this, you'll love it. It also can be added to my queer women-loving women novels or books, and I didn't even buy this knowing that she'd be gay. It just like made me happy to know that she was gay. So really fun book. Glad I got to end this year on that note. I am currently reading 2 books, but it is December 28th when I'm filming this, so I probably won't finish these books until the next year. But I am reading House Fires by Franta, one of the OG O2L YouTubers, so I was definitely an avid viewer during that time, and I love keeping up with current projects of these YouTuber teens that grew up with me and inspired me to start my own YouTube channel. This is his third book, and it's beautiful. There's a mixture of poetry, poems, and little essays or pieces of his life, and if you enjoyed a work in progress or note to self, I'm sure you'll really love this new book, and it just came out this year, so I really wanted to support him and purchase that. And the other book that I am currently reading is called Lord of the Butterflies. This is poetry. It's just poems on every single page, so it's really light to read, and I can just sit on my couch and read a few poems. It's when my brain like needs a break but can't focus hard enough on a story or a plot line. I love poetry. I think I've talked about this on here before because I think I shared some poems maybe. I don't know if I uploaded that video. I might have not. But I have my degree in English and creative writing. Well, I have 2 degrees in English and creative writing, and my senior project in high school actually was poetry, but my senior capstone thesis in college was poetry as well. I took a ton of poetry class. Not like you need classes to be good at poetry. What I'm trying to say is that I have a big appreciation for poetry. So I like reading anthologies or collections of poetry, and I love writing poetry. It's my favorite form of writing. I have a few poems published, and I currently am starting to submit poems for publication, and I haven't done that in a few years, so it feels good to be putting my writing identity back out there and seeing kind of what happens. But I love poetry, so this is a book that will probably enter the new year. And then I wanted to share some books that I recently bought around Christmas time. Well, one was a gift for Christmas and one I bought, but I bought Delilah Green Doesn't Care. This was recommended by someone on Instagram when I was asking for good queer women-loving woman books. They said that I might enjoy this. I think it might be similar to One Last Stop or Written in the Stars, but I don't know because I haven't read it yet. I'll let you know what I think. And in a year from now, I'm sure this will be in my What I Read in 2023 video. And then for Christmas, my mom got me the Nantucket Inn. This is a book that I'm curious about. I'm not expecting much because, again, when something's trendy, I tend to be a bit skeptical, but it might be trendy for a reason. I know that a few people in my family have read it and enjoyed it. A few YouTubers I've watched have read it and enjoyed it, and even went to Nantucket inspired off of this book. Yeah, I'm not sure what to expect, but I've heard great things, so let me know what you think about this book if you've read it without giving me any spoilers. But that is everything that I have read this year, so thank you so much for watching. Please comment down below something that you read. I'm always looking for book recommendations to add to my 2023 list of books to read, and I'm so excited to see what books I fall in love with this year and discover, and authors that I admire. Definitely follow me on Instagram because I always post like what I think about the book that I'm reading on my stories, so you're more up to date there. And then make sure that you're subscribed. If you want more book content, I can give you more book content. But that is everything that I read for 2022, and I had a great time. I'm so glad that I pushed myself to read more and branch out. I'm pretty proud of myself. A treat for those who stayed, I wanted to give you an update on my tattoo because the wrapping is finally off. So if you just watched my last vlog, you saw that I got this tattoo by my boyfriend Ashton, and she's all healed and looks very beautiful. I cannot wait to kind of show her off in the summertime more, but it just fits my body so well, and he did a fantastic job. It's 1:30 in the morning, so I'm going to get ready for bed, but I'll see you real soon with another exciting video. I believe it's going to be my prep my 2023 journal video with me, and then my goals and resolutions. So big things are coming. I've got that new year motivation feeling, so I'm trying to get a lot of new year content up for you. But I'll see you soon with those videos. Have a wonderful rest of your night and happy reading. Bye.